It's time for another huge helping of the Sport Buffet.
We could see something amazing, and I think that's what it's about.
It's not what you're thinking. It's the Sport Buffet.
I want to try out, man.
You wouldn't let someone that stupid come on this show.
It's time again.
Time for the Sport Buffet.
We open up the buffet. Here's Mr. West.
Wake up, Mr. West! Mr. West! Mr. West! Mr. West!
Yeah.
Yes, and welcome into the Sport Buffet. This is your host, AC the Iceman, filling in for Matt West once again, who is on business in Colorado, and we wish him well and safe trips back to his home. But here at the Sport Buffet, we trudge on. We want to give you the best in sports knowledge and sports entertainment. So once again, I have on the air with me CEO of Aristocrat Sportsnet and host of the Aristocrats show on Aristocrat Sportsnet, John Sirocco.
Good afternoon, sir.
It's good to have you on.
It's definitely a pleasure of mine to be on your show. You know that. Thank you for having me again the second time this week.
Yes, most definitely. And I understand the Aristocrats had kind of an interesting show last night. Fun time had. Talk about your show last night and what you guys have going forward this week.
Definitely. We had a little international audience flavor last night. Had represented 4 different countries who were listening to the show. It was, we hit on a little NBA, but we had a very special guest, Frank Staya. He works for Top Rank Incorporated, which is, for boxing fans will know that it's a big primetime boxing promotional company. They promote Manny Pacquiao. He's their marquee star. And yeah, man, we pretty much got into every nook and cranny of the sport of boxing, the current state, and reminisced a little bit on the 25th anniversary of Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas. It was a good time for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. I'll tell you what, talking about that with some friends yesterday, it's pretty amazing. Buster Douglas, a 42-1 underdog here in Vegas, had I believe it was a 9th or 10th round knockout. Just stunned the boxing world. It was almost like Tyson was just never the same.
I think I lost. Did I lose you, Aaron?
You might have. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, we were talking about you're talking about Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson, and the fact that Buster Douglas was a 42-1 underdog, which, I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, would give anybody no shot to win. But did that one fight kind of almost revolutionize boxing as almost the fall of Iron Mike?
Yeah, that I think was definitely the beginning of the I guess you can call it the crumbling of Mike Tyson. That started a downward spiral that is very well documented.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, we here on the Sport Buffet appreciate you tuning in with us. If you want to, feel free to be a part of the show. Give us a call. Our number is 702-475-9-WINS. Once again, 702-475-9-WIN. That is 475-5946. Or you can email us at sportbuffet@gmail.com. Well, let's dive right in. We got a pretty jam-packed show, and I know that, John, you're definitely interested in the topics we have at hand, and I'm ready to get started. You ready?
Man, I was born ready. Like you can call me 30 seconds prior to your show if you need me to fill in. I'm there for you 100%.
You say it like I did that, so.
Not at all.
Let's talk. We touched on Tom Brady in the last couple of shows, and obviously I was full of praise for him. Let's talk about a guy that I feel on the other end of the spectrum, Peyton Manning, and he now says he intends to return in 2015, which I don't think is a shock to anybody. But I guess the initial question is we have a new head coach in Denver, Gary Kubiak, who's somewhat of a quarterback guy. But is Peyton Manning as wanted in Denver as Peyton Manning wants to be in Denver?
I say yes and yes. Yeah, I look at this situation and I think, if Denver doesn't want Peyton Manning back, which maybe they don't want him back at that price, if you want to make that argument, but they literally have nowhere else to turn. There's no other option than to bring Peyton Manning back. If you look at the free agent market, I think the top name out there is right now is Mark Sanchez, and that's not a realistic replacement for a guy like Peyton Manning. You got Brock Osweiler behind Manning, and he's not a realistic option to replace Manning right now. So Denver pretty much at this point, with the way their roster is constructed and with that window of being able to win a championship still open, they have no choice but to want Manning back at this point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that Peyton Manning's a Hall of Famer, and he's a first ballot, and he's probably one of the best, 5 to 10 quarterbacks of all time when, the careers are finished and are ready to be reviewed. But, he's 39, which, is a tough age for a quarterback, especially coming off the injuries that he's had. And let's face it, his arm didn't look the same as it had in years past. And I think that it showed more and more throughout the later parts of the season. And, the NFL's a business, and $19 million for one guy who, this team's ready to contend for a Super Bowl. They're the Yankees, Super Bowl or bust. $19 million is a lot for one guy who they could use to keep Demaryius. They could use to keep guys like Julius Thomas, and they could potentially add a quarterback who maybe Mark Sanchez isn't the guy, but they could potentially add a quarterback who, could get these guys almost more of a game manager than a guy like Peyton Manning.
Yeah, that is definitely a valid argument, but I just don't think John Elway would take that chance at failure, bringing in a guy that is unproven. And it's difficult to say a guy like Mark Sanchez is unproven because he did obviously play in 2 AFC Championship games, but I don't think anybody in this country or that has a sane mind about them would consider Mark Sanchez a franchise quarterback or a quarterback that at this point today is capable of leading a team to a Super Bowl.
Well, sure,
so right now,
you look at what
in
happened.
my opinion, it's like Peyton Manning kind of has a gun up to the Denver Broncos organization head because I think he knows that they need him back more than he needs them.
Right, and I think that we all saw Mark Sanchez's experiment. He had his shot. He had his shot in Philadelphia. But it's a situation where I don't know if necessarily Peyton Manning's even the best quarterback for this team. He may be the best quarterback available if he were to cut ties, but is he necessarily the best quarterback for this team? John, you there?
Yes, I am, and now I can hear you.
Okay, we're having a little technical difficulties here on the Sport Buffet, but no matter, we will trudge on. Basically, what I was saying is, even though Manning is a Hall of Famer by all stretches of the imagination, is he still the best option even for an offense like this?
I think he is, and I heard you. The last piece I heard you talking about was his arm absolutely wasn't the same down the stretch of the season as it has been in years past, and that brings back memories for me because I'm a Dolphins fan, and I grew up watching for the most part Dan Marino's career, and I can vividly remember in the last year or 2 years of Danny Boy's career, you can clearly see that his arm wasn't the same as it used to be. Now, albeit Jimmy Johnson, as the head coach of the Dolphins, was running definitely a run first, play defense type of football game, and it's far from what Denver's doing there with Manning, as they just have a complete aerial assault. But nonetheless, you can still see the rapid deterioration of Manning's. I don't know if I think it has to just boil down to arm strength at this point.
Right, and that's the key. I mean, you've got guys like Demaryius Thomas, and you have guys like Julius Thomas, who could potentially be there, Wes Welker if he decides not to retire. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders had a breakout year, but I think that a lot of his work was done based on the short to intermediate routes, a la Wes Welker, where Emmanuel Sanders has the talent to take any ball within 5 yards to the line of scrimmage and make it into a 60-yard gain. All right, we're going to take a break here just real quick on the Sport Buffet. We're having a little technical difficulties, but stick around. We'll be back in just a second. All right, and we are back here on the Sport Buffet. Sorry about the technical difficulties, folks, but I think we have figured out everything that's going on. I've got John Sirocco back. Or maybe I do. Let's check.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can. That sounds lovely. Your voice is so sultry and smooth.
I know. That's why you keep inviting me back.
It is.
We have figured this, folks, and we are going to trudge on here and hopefully be able to complete the show with no issues.
Yes, actually, I mean, I'm okay completely. Just listening to the sound of your voice, it brightens my day.
I knew we have so much chemistry here, and I love.
Well, this is the Sport Buffet, technical difficulty less on the Sport Buffet Radio Network. We are broadcasting live on Aristocrat Sports Net. We are brought to you by Rank Sports. Rank Sports, your handicapping needs. Visit us online at RANC Sports. That's Rank Sports. Well, let's
Rank Sports 7-2 in the last 9 picks per day.
The free play record's looking pretty good, isn't it? I tell you what, our expert handicappers are definitely putting the man hours in to provide you with some quality free picks. Take a look at their site, Rank Sports. Check out some of the packages they have for the upcoming seasons, and we've got some good packages also finishing up here in the NBA and NHL season. So if you're ready to make some money, check out ranksports.com. Let's dive back into that Peyton Manning talk, and basically we were talking about the $19 million cap hit for the 2015 season, and if that's necessarily worth it on one player who has a history of. I mean, obviously this team is built for the playoffs. They can get through the regular season. They're easily penciled in for 10 wins. That's not the problem. I mean, they've spent a lot of money on this defense. They have the weapons on offense. I really just wonder if Peyton Manning's a liability at this point.
Yeah, and it's a tricky situation because kind of where we're at today in the NFL, if you have or you think you have the quarterback to lead you all the way, you pretty much have to pay him unless he's on a rookie contract in between $15 million and $20 million a season. That's the going rate for a quarterback that can or you think can take you all the way. And Peyton Manning, I think, is at least still in that think you can stage. Whether he can or not remains to be seen at this point.
Well, I mean, let's look at this. You got a new coach in Gary Kubiak who has. I mean, they have another quarterback on that roster, and Brock Osweiler with the Ryan Mallett theory in New England. He was always hyped up, and he was always talked about in his preseason, games. But he never made a start, so you really don't know what you're going to get out of him. I mean, is Kubiak almost better off, letting Manning kind of do his thing because he's been in the league for almost 16 years now. He kind of runs his own operate through an offensive coordinator. Is Kubiak? Will he be better off focusing more on Brock Osweiler this year and developing him just in case he needs him for 2016 or potentially may need him in the middle of this season?
I think there's a certain portion that's going to be devoted to trying to develop Brock Osweiler, but I think right now, since Manning pretty much said he's going to come back, Denver has no choice. And Gary Kubiak, even with Peyton Manning possibly deteriorated at the rate that we're speaking of, and it remains to be seen. Let's not forget that 1 year ago, Peyton Manning had the best year a quarterback has ever had by far in the NFL. Okay, and Gary Kubiak for the past 7, 8, whatever, not coach in Houston, he was relying on a guy like Matt Schaub. So even a Manning he's going to seem like a huge upgrade for Gary Kubiak going out there running an offense. And don't forget, Gary Kubiak built a nice little team over there in Houston, and they won games with Matt Schaub and went to the playoffs with Matt Schaub and went to the playoffs with TJ Yates one time.
Well, that is true. And that's more of a testament to, like you said, the coaching in Houston. And obviously you saw the career that he the career year that he had in Baltimore revitalized guys to the playoffs. But I mean, we're talking to Manning. He's got a neck injury. He's got an arm injury. I mean, he's going to have a full, physical exam, and they're talking about, is he going to be able to last 16 games? I mean, we talk like a Rod Clemens theory where we may have to get maybe 3 games on, 1 game off. I mean, it almost seems like Peyton Manning needs to be babysat, and I don't know if $19 million a year for a 75% quarterback is going to be beneficial. I mean, the Broncos got to think long term. I understand all the chips are in the middle now for winning the Super Bowl with the pieces they got: DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, Demaryius Thomas. I think they got to worry more about getting the key pieces, and maybe not Mark Sanchez, but a guy similar to that. And I'll use a guy who's freshly out of a job, and Josh McCown might be a guy that the Denver should be interested in as far as looking at the guy who can put the pieces in place. I understand his year in Tampa Bay was abysmal, but when he had 2 big wide receivers and he had a big tight end in Chicago, he was successful. And he had a good running back in Matt Forte. They've got a stable of these guys. I mean, Ronnie Hillman, C.J. Anderson, they've got a lot of pieces in place. And I think that I know I'm suggesting that Josh McCown should be starting ahead of Peyton Manning. I just think that, I think that it's going to be buyer's remorse here. And I think that they're going to regret Peyton Manning in the 2015 season.
We shall see. And, I know you follow the Bucs pretty closely, so I kind of see where you would have more insight on Josh McCown than the average Bear. But I don't know, man. I think if I'm John Elway, if I'm putting myself in that position, in his shoes, if I'm Gary Kubiak, at this point, just given the surrounding circumstances and where they're drafting, what do they draft, like 28, 29, 30 or something like that? Like, there's no realistic option right there to I don't know. To me, it's a no-brainer. I think Manning has all the leverage in the world right now to resume his career in Denver if he wants to, and they really have no say about it, basically. I think Denver would be in worse position if Manning decided to retire than if Manning decided to come back for 1 more year.
Well, let me ask you this, and I think that, and my answer to it is yes, absolutely, 100 times yes. And a guy like Josh McCown, I think that leverage that the Denver would have to get Peyton Manning to restructure his contract. Do you think signing a guy like Josh McCown would be that leverage that Denver needs to say, hey, Peyton, we need something along the lines of 11 to 12 million from out of you versus 19 million. We maybe take that 7 million and go use it to upgrade the offensive line or something. But I don't know. I think that his money can be better served elsewhere, and I think that signing a guy like Josh McCown to whatever contract they can get out of him would be almost a bargaining chip to say, hey, Peyton, we can go without you, and maybe they're blowing smoke up his ass, but he doesn't know that.
I mean, it's definitely possible that I mean, at least Denver still, the people that run the Broncos, they're not stupid people whatsoever. They have definite football guys running the show there. They've been a very successful organization for a very long time, and I can almost guarantee that they have thought about that scenario. If the reports are true that they may not want Manning back, I can guarantee you they ran through every single possible scenario with Manning and without Manning. So I think they're going to, kind of put all their people together, lay everything out on the table, and decide what's best for the franchise. I think they're just going to go with Manning and Osweiler, and that's my opinion. But I definitely would not be my soul would not be shocked if route was taken by the Broncos.
Sure. I mean, look, he still has, even though he owns a lot of records, he still has a lot of records that he could catch. And I almost feel that, that's almost what he's playing for. The pursuit of a title, obviously, if he won it at this point, he would surpass his boss in John Elway. But, obviously 2,100 yards and he'll pass Brett Favre, which is, if he plays, I think he'll get that with ease. If he gets 7 more wins, which if he plays, I think the Broncos, you can pencil them in for 7 more wins. He become the all-time wins leader. He also, he can become one of the only quarterbacks in history to be over 38 years old and throw 25 touchdown passes. I mean, there's still there's still things for Peyton Manning to accomplish. And obviously we can pencil them into the playoffs, getting Manning through this regular season. It's not a problem. You can pencil them in that division for at least 10 wins, which is going to be good for a playoff spot. So with that being said, Peyton Manning says he's mentally ready to play football, but is he mentally ready to compete for a championship?
I think a guy like that who's played in 3 Super Bowls, that's won a Super Bowl, that obviously is as decorated a career as any quarterback ever took the field. I think at least mentally on his part, he's always mentally prepared to play in a Super Bowl. Whether the guys around him believe he can take them there, I don't know. But Denver has some serious questions this offseason. They have some big names that are potential free agents, and like you said, that $19 million going to Peyton Manning might be a detriment to trying to bring every single piece back.
Right, and they still, even with Peyton Manning on the roster for $19 million, they'll still be about $20 million over the cap, which, depending. I mean, I'm sure Demaryius is going to command double-digit million a year. Can they keep Julius Thomas? Do they even want to keep Julius Thomas? Who knows? We'll see. But my question, and I've thought about this for a while, is you think Peyton got John Fox fired?
Well, that's interesting because I never even thought about that, and I feel like I'm slacking that didn't cross my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's not anything that's going to ever come out, and maybe 20 years down the road, John Fox may make a claim that probably will fall on deaf ears. But I almost feel like, John Fox wasn't the problem; he was just a scapegoat. And as soon as they've signed Peyton Manning, I think all the pressure in the world fell on John Elway. And I think that Fox was unfairly fired, and they can talk about mutual parting of the ways all they want, but the writing's on the wall. Everybody kind of knows. My question really is just, between Jim Caldwell and John Fox, I almost feel like, Peyton really has a history of pissing off coaches, and I'd like to hear I'd like to hear interviews with Caldwell and Fox one day down the line, and what they really feel, not just PC talk.
That's certainly interesting. I think, yeah, but could you make the claim that although it's never going to come out, like you said, can you make the claim that Manning got Caldwell fired? I mean, Caldwell's last year was the year that Manning got hurt for the season, and Manning was obviously out the door the same year Caldwell was. They replaced both of them with John, Pagano and Andrew Luck. So I don't know if Manning had so much to do with that, but now that Manning's still stuck right in the middle of this current situation in Denver, it's hard to believe that Elway didn't contact Manning before making that decision of firing John Fox. Yeah, I mean, it's just something. And from what I understand, back when in the whole situation with Peyton Manning leaving Indianapolis, if I'm wrong, please feel free to email us at sportbuffet@gmail.com or call us in at 702-475-5946. But I do believe that Peyton Manning was, when they were talking about bringing him back, obviously there was a lot of discussions, but I do believe that Peyton Manning also said he wanted a little bit of input on who the coach would be, and I don't think that Caldwell and Manning always saw eye to eye. I think Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy did, but I do believe that when Caldwell was promoted to head coach, I don't think that he was Peyton Manning's first choice. But you never know. Like I said, I'd like to see an interview with those two guys that isn't like all PC and loaded questions to portray positive vibes. I never heard that, but absolutely, I defer to you when you say something like that. Absolutely, I'm buying in. So if you think there's some merit to that and you heard that, I have no reason to believe it didn't happen. So and someone like you see it all the time, especially in the NBA, where big mega stars they find themselves kind of in the middle, trying to at least put input in when it comes to a head coaching search. And it's got to happen in the NFL too when it comes to, I think it's just less publicized. Sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the superstar nature in the NBA is a lot more of a magnitude than it is in the NFL. And it takes a long career for a guy like Peyton Manning to have the kind of influential necessities that like Tom Brady. There's not a lot of guys in the league that have it in
the NFL, but it doesn't take much in the way of stardom in the NBA to gain that kind of trust with the front office. But how about your boy, Harbaugh, coming out? Basically, speaking of mutual parting of the ways, basically shredding that notion.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And the first thing I thought about, I was like, okay, why would a coach, if it wasn't a mutual parting, why would a coach just come out and say that, he flat out got fired? Most people don't like to admit that they got fired from a job, but it kind of seems that Harbaugh doesn't want any, Harbaugh just kind of wants to make it clear that he didn't quit on his team or something like that. And I have no reason to not buy that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Harbaugh ever quit on this team. Let's make no mistake about that. I think that Harbaugh genuinely only looked at Michigan when he was deemed to be a lame duck in San Francisco. And, he basically came out and said, and I quote, I didn't leave the 49ers. I felt like the 49ers left me. And, you could start to see that almost in week 10 of the regular season. They just gave up. I mean, they finished 8-8, which, it's not great. It's not good. It's not bad, but it's not what expectations were. But basically he was told he will not be the coach anymore, and we will call it mutual. And he said the only reason he deemed that to be okay with him is because he didn't want to be in a position on a team that didn't want him anymore. So, I mean, you call it mutual as you want, but I mean, it sounds like he got fired and he was told to basically twist the words to save face for the 49ers organization. And that doesn't really sit well with me.
No, and it was a crappy situation, at least for the past 7 months to the last year. There was reports out there that this was going to be Harbaugh's last season in San Francisco. The players stopped playing for him. And I think, it finally caught up to the player. You go like later in the season, they get blown out by the Oakland Raiders, which is inexcusable for a team that is, before the season was supposed to be in contention for a Super Bowl again. And at that point, whether the team just gave up because they knew Harbaugh wasn't coming back, regardless of, no matter what the situation was, it was kind of crappy. And I think the media kind of created this whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, I liken this story to, I don't know if you remember, but I want to say about 10 years ago when the Chargers went 14-2 and were eliminated in the division round by the Patriots, Marty Schottenheimer was fired. I look at that situation and, obviously it's hard to wrap your mind around a guy getting fired after a 14-2 year. But you know what? At least the Chargers organization came out, honestly and said, we have disagreements between our coaching staff and our management, so we've decided to go in another direction. You got a guy who the rest of the league would kill for. I mean, you saw what the Raiders offered him. The rest of the league would kill for a coach like this. And you know what? Just say, look, there's disagreements between the front office and the coaches on the field. We've decided to go in a different direction. Don't say it's mutual. Don't make Harbaugh say that he wanted to be out of this job. Harbaugh would coach the 49ers for 20 more years if he could.
I completely.
Yeah, so I really don't think that there's a mutual parting of the ways in this situation. And I really think, and a part of me hopes that this reflects poorly on the 49ers. I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to be dust under the rug. But I think it definitely deserves a mention about the 49ers franchise and kind of a little bit of the scumminess that has gone on in the last, let's say, like you said, 7 months.
Yeah, and just going back to that Marty Schottenheimer situation, imagine if the Chargers organization sided with Marty in that whole situation, because the big thing was he was and AJ Smith was a Phillip Rivers guy, and that's kind of where they went their separate ways. So you just kind of wonder what kind of direction the Saints or the Chargers would have been in if the Chargers made a different decision there. But I'm happy for Harbaugh. He's got probably a dream job right now. College jobs are, I'm guessing, a lot less stressful than NFL jobs. They have their level of stress for sure. But an NFL job, it seems like, is just 24 hours days a week, 365 days a year. I always look at it like the presidency of the United States. You see their inauguration picture, and then you see their opening introductory press conference, and then when they get fired or when they're leaving the presidency office, they look about 200 years older than they did when they first took the job. Yeah, so I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy for Harbaugh because he's got a great job. And it seems like he was kind of bitter about the whole, and he didn't want. I don't know if he wants San Francisco to come off looking a little worse by coming out with this comment, but at least he put it out there. He put out how he feels at the very least.
Yeah, I don't think that he's looking to gain anything by this, because obviously he has another job and he's not going back to the 49ers, and he's not looking for an apology from the 49ers. But I think that it's good that he put this out here, because I really think that San Francisco and I've said this many times, I think San Francisco is going to come to regret Colin Kaepernick's contract, and for the next 5 to 10 years, I think it's going to set them back. And I really hope that Harbaugh's intention was just to pile on, so to speak, really just kind of take the high road, but leave just a little bit of a dig right there into the 49ers side. And I like it. It struck me, and I have a little bit more respect for Harbaugh after that. And, you look at a guy, 49, 22, and 1 in 4 seasons with a Super Bowl appearance, 3 NFC title appearances. I don't understand. There has to be a complete rift in management. I mean, if I did that for 4 years, I would never expect to be leaving my job. I would probably expect to be the general manager of the team. I expect to be looking for a promotion, or a vertical move, not going back to college, which I understand that Michigan's his alma mater, but I'm pretty sure that he'd still rather be in San Francisco if he had his pick.
Couldn't agree with you more. And the thing about he comes off as a weird cat, but he comes off as an honest guy, a guy that's gonna say what's on his mind, and a guy that really doesn't care what you think about what he says. And I like that. I like that candidness.
Yeah, exactly. So, he seems like a guy that really doesn't do it for the money, which is evidenced by taking less to go to Michigan than going over to the Raiders and potentially being in a situation that isn't ideal for a head coach. But speaking of money, Roger Goodell got a slight pay increase from 2013 to 2014. I don't know how often you get a pay increase, or how often you get a pay increase of this exponential magnitude, but guy made $9 million in 2013 and made $35 million in 2014. What are your thoughts on that?
Not a bad gig.
Not at all. Not at all. Are you a pro Goodell? Let's put this out there. So before we have this conversation, are you pro Goodell, or are you an anti Goodell kind of guy?
I think when I think of that, it depends on which side of the spectrum you're looking at. If I'm an NFL owner, yes, I'm absolutely pro Goodell, because this guy makes so much money for these owners. He's I think tripled NFL's revenue since he took over office from Tagliabue. There's no way he's going anywhere just because he's making them so much money, and business wise, he's doing the correct things. But when it comes to day-to-day rules and suspensions and stuff like that running the league, there's definitely some things that are questionable about Roger Goodell, and some things that are able to be complained about. And you hear all those, from a year to year. The players are not very fond of Roger Goodell, and fans, for the most part, are not very fond of Roger Goodell. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I hate to say this, but it's going to come out bad. But fans and players are stupid.
They are. You're absolutely correct.
They're sheep. You're in a situation where you're given a product, and that product is meant to entertain you, whether it be once a week, twice a week, or around the clock, year round. But the fact of the matter is you're given a product as entertainment. Once the entertainment ceases, you have no involvement in it. You can read about it and you can talk about it, but at the end of the day, you have nothing to do with it. So it has basically a sense of just watch. That's it. So if Roger Goodell, I have no problem with his salary, by the way. I should just preface that. I think Roger Goodell is a phenomenal commissioner. I think Roger Goodell has been great for this league. I think that he's taken what Paul Tagliabue created. I've said before, Paul Tagliabue built the league in spite of the problems that his players have caused. Now I think that Roger Goodell has expanded the league and still managed to be able to take care of the problems that players have caused. Does he always go about it the right way? Maybe not. And I think that at the end of the day, he never will, but I think at the end of the day, he needs to relinquish, like you said, day-to-day control over decisions regarding players, because I feel like he does have a problem trying to make a objective decision for not only the player. I feel like he tries to make an objective decision for what's best for the league. And I don't think that you can make the same decision based on these two categories. I think that if, the NFL is all about protecting the shield, if you have a guy like Ray Rice who, is convicted or, accused of domestic violence, a guy like Greg Hardy who's convicted of domestic violence, guys who have been, at least tried for various crimes, convicted of various crimes, if the way to clean up your league is to get rid of these guys. And I say the same thing about Major League Baseball and the steroid problems. A guy like Ray Rice for a while there was great for the league because he was a Northeastern superstar hailing from Jersey, playing in Baltimore. But the fact of the matter is I don't care who you are. If you commit a wrongdoing, you deserve to be punished. But I feel like Roger Goodell wasn't necessarily the right guy to be able to punish him. You can't be the judge, jury, and the executioner, and that's what Roger tries to be. But as far as growing the league, because let's look at it. Roger Goodell works for the owners. He works for no one else. His boss are the 32 owners in the league. So basically, I would take a poll every year of the 32 owners and tell me if Roger Goodell's doing a great job. I mean, I'll read you a quote here. The commissioner's compensation is a fair reflection of his leadership and contributions throughout the year. And that was from Arthur Blank, who's the owner of the Falcons. He's also the chairman of the compensation committee. So that's pretty much the guy that's straight at the top, Arthur Blank. He's the guy who pretty much signs Roger Goodell's checks. So if you got 32 guys who are your bosses and you have basically done a good job for them, I don't really care what anybody else thinks. And if you to think that $35 million is what he deserves to be paid, then fine. I think he's done a fantastic job and he deserves every penny.
Yes, and the 32 owners in the NFL are not stupid people by any stretch of the imagination. They're actually some of the brightest people that this world and our country has to offer, and they haven't made themselves that successful by overpaying people or whatever. So, I just have to. I'm not going to hate on anybody, first of all, for whatever. If they can go out and get what they're worth on the market, then that's what America is based on, first of all. And if 32 billionaires are willing to pay this guy collectively $35 million a season, then so be it. Roger Goodell went out and got $35 million for himself in 2013, and I absolutely have no problems or no issues with that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Many fans forget that these owners didn't just sprout up overnight. They're not owners of a football team. That's not what makes them rich. They're owners of enterprises, businesses, conglomerates, worldwide entities that are what basically bring in their money that is able to keep them funneling that money into a football team for the entertainment purposes of the fans. And a lot of times fans forget that these guys exist outside of the sports world. So like you, sharpest minds and the sharpest businessmen that we've ever seen. So if they deem that they're not going to go hire in a slouch, I mean, they have the power to get rid of the commissioner. And if everybody, all these millions of fans had such a problem with him, they had two options. They could talk to their owners, obviously not face to face, but they could let their owners know by names, or they could basically, like I said, boycott the games, boycott the NFL. But the NFL is the most watched sport in all of America. So clearly, as much as we want to sit here as fans and hate on Roger Goodell, we still watch the product he puts out. So in turn, the owners deem he's a worthy recipient of the title of commissioner, and obviously $35 million.
Yeah, if my boss came up to me, if I was doing such a good job, that my boss came up to me and said, "I'm raising your salary from $9 million to $35 million this year because you made us this much money," I'm not caring what anybody thinks of me, first of all. And the only person that Roger Goodell needs to worry about pleasing, as is the the majority of the rest of this country is their boss, and that's apparently his bosses were very pleased with him.
Yeah, and I'm reading some of the comments here on the article, and people talking about he needs to go, blah blah blah. But yet, I can bet you every single person on this article will tune in every single week to see the product that he puts out. Now, obviously, he's not the face of the NFL, but I think that he's done a great job in promoting. And you know what? No publicity, in my opinion, is bad publicity. So you can hate, you can love Roger Goodell all you want. But the fact of the matter is he's a successful commissioner. He's probably one of the most successful commissioners given the era that he has to basically govern over. I mean, we have these athletes nowadays who just think they can get away with anything. They have no problem thinking that they're bigger than the law, bigger than the world. And you know what? I think that these guys need to be set in place. I think playing in the NFL is a privilege. I don't care if you're the best athlete in the world. Playing in the NFL is a privilege, and playing for that shield. And I think somewhere along the way, these guys lost it. And obviously money and television is what gets in the way. But you know what? We need to get back to an era where these guys are proud to wear the uniforms, not proud, basically. They're proud of themselves for being able to get to that level. No, you need to be proud for being allowed to be into that sport's highest level and eventually its highest honor if you're lucky enough to make the Hall of Fame. So I think that players and fans alike, you're just stupid. That's the word I have. You're just stupid. This guy is great for the league, and I hope he continues to be the commissioner for 20 more years.
Yeah, no, yeah, fans are stupid. A lot of fans speak without knowledge or in-depth knowledge of most situations. They hear something and they'll just form opinions based on preliminary understanding of things. But let us not forget too. Obviously, one of the big gripes about Goodell's commissionership is that he is pretty much the judge, jury, and execution in a lot of cases when it comes to discipline of players. The players' union is a labor union, and this stuff is all collectively bargained by the players and agreed upon by the players. So it's not like they want to complain and stuff, but their representation actually signed off on this stuff. So it's not like Goodell just came in the office one day and said, "You're fired, you're fired, you're fired.
Right.
I'm taking over these duties." This is stuff that's all bargained over for months and months and months at a time. And these are long collective bargaining deals that range from 7 to 10 years at a time.
Right. And that's the thing. You know what? If you didn't like it, you should have held out. Obviously we had a strike, 4 or 5 years ago. And, they held their ground for a while. But like you said, they ended up giving Roger Goodell the power because at the end of the day, money talks. They weren't willing to stand their ground and fight for their beliefs because all they care about is exposure and dollars. And you know what? To an extent, obviously the NFL is the same way. But if there's no exposure, there's no dollars. So if there's no NFL games to be broadcast, there's no players, there's no money. So the NFL would have been hit where it hurt, but they decided that getting paid their salary was a lot more. And I'll talk about Adrian Peterson. When he tells me that that the NFL treats him like a slave, yet he's paid $8.5 million a year. I think it's a poor choice of words there, bud. So
sounds more like an indentured servant there, Adrian.
Yeah, you know what? I'll do anything you want for $6 or $8 million a year. So there's not a lot of things I wouldn't do, especially run around and play football. You know what? And that's the thing. We're talking about this with the CTE, and Roger Goodell's being attacked from all sides. The former players with the brain injuries and the concussions. I mean, we've had discussions on that, and I'll just give you my quick take. You know what? If you're worried about your future concussions and your future injuries and your future body's liability, don't play the game. But if you don't like the way Roger Goodell runs his NFL, and you don't like the way the owners have put in place a guy who basically wants to clean up the game and make it a fun atmosphere and a fun product, then you leave. Go play somewhere else. Canada's calling.
And the thing about it is, the NFL is so mega popular right now that you can pretty much literally turn it into, and I'm speaking literally right now, put flags on these guys and people will still watch.
Yeah, and that's another situation, and I feel bad for Roger Goodell because I feel like he's backed into a corner in the sense of, I don't see the problem. If you're on the field, with the exception of, some clear evidence of taking guys out, which there have been plays where you've seen clear evidence of somebody trying to, injure intentionally. But you know what? You step on that field and you come across the middle, that's what you expect. I mean, guys like Chris Carter, all of them said it. Keyshawn Johnson was one of the best to ever do it, but he took his licks. Michael Irvin the same way. Michael Irvin was forever taken from this game based on going across the middle. That's what this game is. It's a violent game. And I think that Roger Goodell should stand his ground against the players. Like I said, essentially he holds the leverage. You don't want to play in this sport. You don't want to endanger yourself, put yourself on the field. Fine. You don't like it, leave. This is my league. This is the way football's been played for almost 100 years, over 100 years. There's other places if you want to showcase. You're not going to make the money that you're going to make here.
Yeah, no change. I can promise you, going back to the 20s when the NFL was established, defensive backs and linebackers, they were looking to take guys' heads off when they were coming over the middle. And
Sure.
Nothing changed from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and so forth, all the way up until today. That's football, like you said, like it hasn't changed for the past almost 100 years.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, essentially when it boils down to it, if you don't like it, leave. And I mean, Goodell has a little bit of some things that are head scratchers, like Marshawn Lynch's cleats, that whole debacle in the NFC title game and the Super Bowl. But, overall, I would say, my rating for Roger Goodell is a solid A as far as NFL commissioner. But I touched there right there on Marshawn Lynch's cleats. So segue, Marshawn Lynch is potentially talking about being one of those people to leave Roger Goodell's NFL. Not in the way we would think, but he's contemplating retirement, which comes as a little bit of a shocker on the heels of 2 straight Super Bowl appearances, 1 championship, and 1 more year until he's due to get paid, because he, in my opinion, is one of the best running backs in the league. So, we've seen this before, Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, but in an era where you're due to get a lot more money than those guys did, is it really, really smart for Lynch to be walking away at this point?
I don't think so. But, that's easy for, me or you to say. Marshawn Lynch is one of the most ferocious runners in the NFL. He doesn't avoid contact too often. And he's been playing running back in the NFL with this style for, 7, 8, 9 years now. So that's got to take a toll on somebody's body that's 230 pounds. I was thinking when I read this about the Barry Sanders situation, but it's distinguishable big time because Barry kind of wanted to win a Super Bowl or compete for one at least. And that was his major gripe about the Lions. And that's why he wanted to be traded. Marshawn is coming off 2 straight Super Bowl appearances and is still under contract on that for that Super Bowl team. So it's different situation, and I'm thinking he might be using it as maybe a leverage to get extended or leave Seattle. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, and that's probably the ploy to get him paid. But Seattle's come out and said we're ready to pay Marshawn Lynch. So I mean, it has to be a ploy to the other teams in the NFL. But the thing that I find funny is for a guy who hates talking and hates being public and hates being a participant in media days, he sure likes it when the attention's on him.
Well, I think his agent probably had a lot to do with this story being leaked. And, on the flip side, if it was Marshawn who was behind it, he is kind of a weird dude. And, who knows what this guy's thinking sometimes. He kind of operates from the beat of his own drum most of the time.
Yeah, and I mean, the article that's come out, basically he was interviewed from a biased perspective. His old teammate Robinson thinks that money doesn't have a play in this, but I think that's really the only play in this. I think if Marshawn Lynch was seriously contemplating retirement, that would be something he would have internally or with his very close group. I don't think that that's something that he would want to be public, because if you're contemplating retirement, I really don't think that in the day and age, disposable, for lack of a better word. Not saying that Marshawn Lynch isn't one of the best, but at the end of the day, look what Shady McCoy happened last year. He was 2 years ago. He was one of the greatest running backs in NFL history. The next year he is splitting time with Darren Sproles. They're just, they're so replaceable. I think that, an NFL franchise, if you're really trying to deploy them for $5 or $6 million more a year, I think they'll say, look, we'll go in a different direction. We've got Robert Turbin, we've got Christine Michael, who run just as hard. If you watch Seahawks games, they run just as hard as Marshawn Lynch. Now, are they maybe the caliber and talent of Marshawn Lynch? No, but that comes with time. That comes with carries. Look at Marshawn Lynch in Buffalo. He wasn't as good as he was here in Seattle. I mean, it took 3 or 4 years for him to become beast mode. So, I mean, if money leverage is his intention in this, whether it's him or his agent, if it's his agent, he needs a new agent, because if what we know about Marshawn Lynch is true, that he hates the spotlight, this is kind of going the other way with it, for lack of a better term.
It is, and there's got to be some question of whether his agent had anything to do with it. It's quite possible, but Marshawn did speak to Michael Robinson, like you mentioned, and people have to remember that the NFL is a business first, not only for the teams but for the players. Every player's action, especially a veteran like Marshawn Lynch, I think everything that they do, especially strategically like this, because you had to think that Marshawn, by doing this, it was some sort of strategy, and I'm not sure which way he wanted to go with it, but you have to think of how is it going to affect my business, and when I say my, I mean for that player. And I think reports are going to come out here. They're going to start to surface, and when something gets done here with Seattle, I think there's going to be more out about this of what his true intentions were, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to retire, that's fine. Go for it. I got no problem with it. There'll be another one of you. Nobody's bigger than the game. And that's the problem that's become, do we blame the media? Sure, absolutely, because now we've become a 24-hour news cycle, and we have to find things to fill the time. So we allow players to become bigger than the game, but in the real world, nobody's bigger than the game. The game will go on with or without Marshawn Lynch. So, if he's unsure what to do, then you know what? Take a few moments to yourself, decide if you really want to play. But you know what? Be respectful to your franchise. Give them a little bit of time to prepare for life without you.
Okay, let me ask you this: does the NFL obviously is going to march on without Marshawn? Does Seattle march on without Marshawn?
I think if they keep all the pieces in place, obviously pay Russell Wilson what he's due. I know that the Legion of Boom is, for the most part, locked up intact. They may lose Byron Marshall or Jeremy Lane, but they almost seem like guys who can be replaced. I think re-signing Bobby Wagner is going to be really key to them and their continued success. So I think with Turbin and Christine Michael and potentially even drafting another running back, I think that with the read option and the way that they can run screens out of the backfield, and they could do things that potentially Marshawn couldn't do. And I think they'd be okay without Marshawn Lynch.
Okay, it's the NFL offseason is almost as interesting as the NFL season itself, and this offseason certainly has some major storylines, especially when it comes to the running back position. Might be a little bit of a carousel.
Yeah, we'll see. I think running back, and I think it's shown in the draft, and I think it's shown in the amount of money that running backs are paid. Running back is just another position. Quarterback, left tackle, defensive line, and corner are the most important positions in the NFL. And running back, obviously not being mentioned, is not one of those. So I think that the Seahawks would be fine, and the carousel will continue.
Yeah, and I think it was Bill Polian who was on TV the other day, and he said it best about the running back position at this point. You have either you're on a rookie contract, or you're on a veteran minimum contract, or you're the top, or you're that elite top 3 or 4. Basically, you're making $8 or $9 million a year, or you're making the minimum. There's no in between in the running back position at this point.
Right, and that's the thing. Even those guys that are making $8 or $9 million a year aren't the same guys that were making that money 10 years ago, LaDainian Tomlinson. I think the only true stable back that, and who knows anymore, that was really worth the money was Adrian Peterson, because you know what? You put 5 guys in the box, you put 8 guys in the box, you put 10 guys in the box. For whatever reason, you just could not stop that guy. And I think even with guys like Marshawn Lynch, LaShawn McCoy, you stacked guys in the box. It's almost like Barry Sanders. You could put 11 guys in the box. Barry Sanders was going to find a way to get 180 yards on you and 2 touchdowns. So it's just, I don't see the overwhelming dominance of a league in Marshawn Lynch like I do in guys like Adrian Peterson, Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, LaDainian Tomlinson. I don't see that in Marshawn. So I would let him walk. He's still under contract. So obviously if he has nowhere to go but back to Seattle for one more year, but after that, let him test a free agent market. If you're willing to offer him $7 million a year and he thinks he's worth 14, let him go. Let him go.
Yeah, I like your take on that. Absolutely. The important thing is for Marshawn and Seattle is that he's still under contract for another year. So, this might be much ado about it, nothing.
Yeah, right now it is. I mean, it's basically the way contracts are developed is basically that last year you're negotiating an extension or you're talking about, you're either negotiating an extension or you're not talking. So if you're not talking, that can't bode well. So basically this next year, Seattle's already come out and said we'd be willing to negotiate an extension for Marshawn Lynch. I don't know how they're going to pay all these guys, but I'm not a capologist, so that's I'll leave that up for people above my pay grade. So, anyways, speaking of people that we talk about Marshawn Lynch, and he's talking about retiring for the wear and tear that it does on his body. Well, let's switch gears. Obviously it's NBA All-Star Weekend, and a guy who should be a part of these festivities, if not for a gruesome injury, Paul George. You remember when he got his leg broken in that USA basketball game? Did you see that play?
I did, yes. It was pretty disgusting.
Yeah, it was. I remember seeing it real time, just watching it. Oh, it was. Anyways, no matter. There are talks that he could be returning to action here soon, and I understand that the Pacers. I don't know the stats exactly. I'll have to get the crack research staff on that, but I don't. I think the Pacers aren't too far out of the Eastern Conference playoffs.
They are currently today 2 games out of the 8th seed.
Well, there you go. See, like I said, they're not too far out, and especially in the Eastern Conference, if you can get a nice 5 or 6 game winning streak going on, hell, you could be the 3 seed by the end of next week. But anyways, but the point is that from that injury, I couldn't even imagine when that injury happened that he would ever be playing this year in the NBA season. But who knows? I mean, if he comes back and gives 80% of what Paul George used to be, I mean, is that something that could push the Pacers into playoff contention? I ask you, I divert this to you because you're more of a basketball guy than I am, and I lean to you for knowledge on this topic.
Well, I think so. The Pacers are borderline playoff team without Paul George. They got a starting 5 right now of George Hill, Stuckey, Miles, David West, Roy Hibbert, and all 5 of those guys are averaging no less than 11 and no more than 14 points a game. So they play collective basketball together. Now, if you can have 4 of those guys doing that and add a Paul George, and if George can come in and give you almost 20 gets back, and it's questionable whether he will be. I mean, everyone saw how long it's taking Derrick Rose to get back from his injury, and Paul George's injury might be more severe than Derrick Rose's, which is, like you said, it's unfathomable that he might be back in March. But if George can come back and give almost 19, 20 points a game, I think Indiana, they're ripe for a big upset possibly in the first round of the playoffs if George is being able to contribute, like you said, around 80% of what he maybe have been able to do in years past.
Well, I'll tell you what, and we talk about, let's look at the playoff scenario in that sense. I mean, if they are lucky enough to survive with Paul George and become a better team and sneak into the 8th spot or the 7th spot, you're looking at playing, in my opinion, that's a playoff tested team with Paul George back. All those guys have playoff experience and big time playoff experience playing there with their rivalry with the Heat in the last 4 years. We're talking about 8th spot, 7th spot, even to an extent, possibly if they get to the 6 or 5, playing teams like the Wizards, the Raptors, and the Hawks, who don't really have a lot of that battle-tested playoff experience. So that could be something that really, really becomes intriguing for the first round of the playoffs, especially in the sense of the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, 1 versus 8 matchups usually don't offer a lot of excitement. But I think that the Pacers, with Paul George back at 100%, averaging 17 to 20 points a game, and igniting that city and building that fan base back, because I know the fan base has definitely been sitting through a devastating year after, the success that they've achieved in the last couple. I think that brings an intriguing storyline to the Eastern Conference playoffs here in about 2 months.
Well, yeah, and Indiana still has to battle on for about another month without Paul George if this timeline stays accurate. But able to sneak into the 6th spot, it's very likely that Cleveland's going to be the 3 seed, and that's a tough out for the Cavaliers and LeBron James in the first round of the playoff for a team that over the past several seasons has pretty much made it their exact motivation to battle with LeBron James.
I mean, they're 2 games, like you said, 2 games out of the 8th spot, but they're 2 games out of the 7th spot too. Like I said, a nice 6-game winning streak with Paul George, potentially coming back. If they can, I'm really, what I would like to see is the announcement of Paul George coming back. I'd like to see that ignite a fire under the Pacers currently, because let's face it, March 1st he's going to start practicing, which another 2 weeks could be let's say March 4th. We're looking at another month. And go one way or the other in the month. But I mean, they're 21-33, which is 12 games under 500. And amazingly, they could still, with the 3-game win streak, lock up a 7 seed. I mean, that's just, again, that's a whole other story. We've talked about that. But, look at the teams ahead of them. You got the Celtics, the Pistons, the Nets, the Heat, the Hornets, anybody to, be scared of. So, I mean, I think this is good news for the Pacers, and I'd really like to see it light a fire into their asses. Because the Pacers are a good team, and the Pacers can play well when their whole team is there. And I think it might save Frank Vogel's job. We haven't really heard a lot about that. Frank Vogel came in and basically was a stalwart in keeping this team successful. But obviously, we've seen how much Paul George means to that franchise. And if he could come back and, like you said, 17 to 20 points a game, even if he can give you 15 to 17, I think that the lift he can provide emotionally, and from that standpoint, like you said, the 6th seed, the 7th seed, be a fun first-round matchup for anybody. And I don't think anybody wants the Pacers if they're firing on all cylinders with Paul George in the first round.
You're right. And, I think you said it best when you said he might give them an emotional lift. That part of the season, with about a month to go in the season, George might be coming back, is when a lot of teams start to fade or, start hitting that wall. Whereas if George is able to come back at that point, the Pacers might be getting their second. And, they might be a scary team. I like that. Now, let me ask you, are you going to watch the dunk contest and the 3-point shootout tonight?
I will have it on DVR, and then I will probably keep intending on watching it until I need the space, and then probably delete it. So probably not.
Nice. Yeah, this is I love I love watching the 3-point contest every year, man. You got tonight. You got Stephon Curry, you got Klay Thompson. You got some damn good shooters in the contest tonight. It's going to be fun to watch.
Tell me, who's in the dunk contest? Because I mean, I understand nobody who I want to see is in the dunk contest. So tell me, kind of sell me on why I should see the dunk contest, or who's in it that I should see.
You should save your hour and a half and not watch the dunk contest tonight. I think there's only 4 or 5 participants. I saw the list earlier. From what I can remember, the most notable name was Victor Oladipo and Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee.
The Greek
guy. Yes, sir. Those are the 2 big names that I saw in the contest, and there was 2 or 3 more that I can't remember.
Sold me. I'm an Oladipo fan. I'll tell you that from my days living in Florida. So he might be. I may watch it. I'm gonna DVR it for sure, but I may actually sit down and watch it then.
No, All-Star Weekend's a lot of fun. I love NBA All-Stars weekend. I guess you could say it's my favorite all-star game of all the professional sports, be it basketball, football, baseball, whatever, or hockey. I love NBA All-Star, the best out of all of them by far, and it's not even close.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm more of a baseball fan as far as the All-Star game goes, because I feel it has a little bit of an emphasis as far as, repercussions on the rest of the season. But yeah, the NBA All-Star Game. I remember when guys like Jordan and Ivan, early LeBron. That was, they were fun to watch. But I will tell you this: I will watch the 3-point competition just because I'm interested to see the second quarter. So that's probably one thing I will play when I try to wind the DVR down and get some more space. I'll watch the 3-point contest, and I like the thing that they do. I don't know if they still do it, where they have the legend, the NBA, the WNBA player, and I think they have a celebrity, or is it another NBA player? Whatever they do, half court, 3-point and free throw. I think that's a pretty cool, especially giving love to the WNBA.
Yep, they are. They still do that, and that's on tap for tonight as well.
Cool. And the skills competition, is that still a thing?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Seems like you're up to date on the All-Star festivities. So I like that.
Well, I like to keep an eye on the pulse. I like to keep a finger on the pulse, and I may watch it. We'll see.
So, folks, don't let AC Aaron Crouch fool you when he said he's not up to speed on the NBA. He's BSing you. This guy has more knowledge than he's making out to be when it comes to basketball.
I keep an eye on what's going on. You won't ever see me sitting down to watch a game, but I keep an eye on what's going on.
He's just laying low right now because his Celtics and his Magic are pitiful basketball teams.
Well, that helps in me not watching basketball. That is true. But this is the Sport Buffet. We are live on the Aristocrat Sports Net. We are glad you could join us. If you want to be part of the show, give us a call, 702-475-5946. That's 702-475-9WIN. Also, you can send us an email at sportbuffet@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out the sites, aristocratsportsnet.com. Also, check out www.thesportbuffet.com. We are brought to you courtesy of Rank Sports. Check them out at ranksports.com, www.ranksports.com. That's RANC sports.com, your number one source for sports handicapping needs. Those are some good. And I'd like to welcome actually Rank Sports' newest boxing lead writer. You've actually been listening to him for the last hour. Johnny, tell us about your new venture with Rank Sports and their boxing.
Yeah, they had an opening here, and somehow I got the gig. So that was pretty amazing. I definitely feel fortunate to be able to have a platform to express at least my opinions and kind of report some things when it comes to the sport of boxing. And I'm hoping that people will enjoy what I write. And I'd like to get a lot of feedback from other people, what my readers are, how they feel about the situations that I'm going to be writing about. I'm very excited about the opportunity, and I definitely want to thank Rank Sports. They are definitely when it comes to a lot of things in the sports world, not only handicapping, but just the coverage of all these sports. From what I understand, there's featured writers for every different sport that you can think of, and these guys are so highly qualified. I'm telling you, check out ranksports.com, and you are going to be hooked. I promise.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know that the crew over at Rank Sports is happy to have you aboard. And they have a good operation going on over there. And I know the Sport Buffet is also happy to be a part of it. Let's dive into boxing. We got what's left before we got to wrap up the show. And what I know of boxing is the next big fight is supposed to be May 2nd with Pacquiao and Mayweather. Are they just blowing smoke up our heinies, or what do you think is the real scoop on that?
Who's Pacquiao? No, I'm just kidding.
Come on, you just talked to the top ranked guys. You got to know who Pacquiao is.
I know. You know what? This fight has been negotiated many times over the course of the past 6.5 years, and so many times they've supposedly been close to a fight, and something falls apart at the last minute, and everybody's emotions gets let down. This negotiation has gone extremely further than any other in the past, which is very encouraging. This time you have Mayweather and Pacquiao actually taking the initiative to meet with each other and speak face to face, which has never happened before. Right now, the major hangup is between HBO and Showtime. And from all indications that are coming out from, whoever has knowledge of the negotiations when it comes to that, they're almost done. There was a report out yesterday by one of the most notable boxing writers out there, Steve Kim, that said the fight will likely be announced this weekend. I am hesitant to believe that, but it's good news that the fight is likely being close to being signed. And if it is to occur on May 2nd, it has to be signed in the very near future just to give the fighters time to prepare and train for the fight.
I was going to say, it's already Saturday and it's already 6 o'clock now, and they better get on the ball. So do you think this fight's going to happen?
Yes. One will be yes.
Okay. Do you think this fight's going to happen on May 2nd, 2015?
Yes, even in September 2015 as well.
Really? You heard it here first? You think there's going to be a rematch? Okay, well, speaking of the rematch, let's dive back to the May fight. And you're way too early to predict. Who do you think will walk away May 2nd from that fight as the winner?
I think Floyd Mayweather is going to win the fight. And just for a basic explanation of that is I'm going to equate it back to Manny Pacquiao's last against Juan Manuel Marquez. Juan Manuel Marquez fought Pacquiao 4 times and gave Pacquiao more trouble than any fighter in the could ever imagine. More trouble than Morgan for sure over 4 fights. That's because Juan Manuel Marquez is one of the top fighters in the last 25 to 30 years at timing people inside the ring. Floyd Mayweather is probably the fighter at doing that over the past 25 years. And I think that's going to be, couple that, Mayweather's obviously more skillful and fast and probably more strong than Marquez. So I think all that with the combination of Floyd's athleticism, I think that will be enough to put Pacquiao out. Maybe not by knockout, but it's going to be a tremendous fight. And like I said, it's going to be a rematch clause on both sides in back. So expect to see it again in September.
That definitely would be awesome. We waited 6 years for one fight, and now we're potentially going to get 2 fights. That could be huge. That could be the kick in the ass boxing needs to get it out of the shadow of the UFC.
Yeah, and not only that, Floyd and Manny, respectively, are the 2 best fighters of probably mine and your generation.
Sure.
And the Tyron Ali, and they're linked together forever. They were the 2 best heavyweights of their time, and we're lucky because the 2 best fighters of our generation happen to be in the same weight class. And at this point, they're still by far and away the 2 best fighters in the world, and they're likely going to fight. So I think it's fitting for them to fight at least 2 or 3 times, just to have them sit their names linked together in history forever with boxing.
But it doesn't end up like Hopkins and Jones.
Well, a lot of people forget that Hopkins and Jones fought back in the 90s when they were middleweights, and that's when Roy Jones was at the peak of his career and physically and mentally and just athletically dominated Bernard Hopkins. Roy Jones actually won that fight with one hand. He had one hand broken in that fight. And the big difference between Hopkins and Jones fighting the second time was that they were both over the age of 40. Pacquiao in the late 30s. But what is different about Hopkins and Jones is Pacquiao and Mayweather are still by far and away the 2 number 1 and number 2 boxers in the world at this point. So that, the fight loses no meaning because, like I said, it's number 1 versus number 2, and number 3, number 4 is so far away that this is the...
Well, there you have it, listeners. Basically, a complete analytical breakdown of the fight by John Sirocco, CEO of Aristocrat, lead writer. And John, I appreciate you once again filling in for Matt, and once again providing great insight and a great, I think obviously you're welcome back anytime, and I'm glad to have you on here again.
Thank you so much, Aaron. When I'm not on, I'm definitely listening to you. You keep me entertained more than I can ever imagine, and more than it probably should. I mean, that's definitely a compliment to you guys. You guys have a
I was going to say,
show.
I didn't
Thank
know
you very
where-
much for having me again.
I didn't know where that was going. So, but this has been the Sport Buffet on the Sport Buffet Radio Network, broadcasting to you live on Aristocrat Sportsnet. Check out our good friends at Aristocrat Sportsnet. If you'd like to advertise on aristocratsportsnet.com, John, tell them where they can get some more information about advertising on Aristocrat Sportsnet.
Absolutely. If you go to aristocratsportsnet.com, there's a contact tab in the middle of the website. You can go there and just send an email to me. It'll go directly to me, or if you don't want to send an email at aristocratsportsnet@gmail.com. And you don't have to make it anything fancy or whatever. Just let me know if you're interested, and we'll definitely get you set up there.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely good to get publicity for not only the Aristocrat Sportsnet, but for the nation. Anybody who's tuning in, if a business on the Sport Buffet or Aristocrat Sportsnet or both, we'd be happy to have you guys. We'd be happy to portray your logos and happy to have you on the show to discuss your businesses. Once again, thank you, John. Sorry, Matt, we couldn't have you on the show today, but we know you had some business to deal with. So looking forward to having Matt back on the show at Buffet with Matt West. So we'd be remiss to not have him on the show regularly. So for John Sirocco, I am the Iceman, Aaron Crouch. We appreciate you listening. If you feel like you have a take when the show's not live, give us an email at sportbuffet@gmail.com. Once again, signing off, have a great evening.